Hi everyone, it's Brandon, also known as Sglitch, and I have made the impulsive decision to return to YouTube. A lot has changed since the last video with my face in, as I briefly detailed in a community post. My teeth look different, my hair looks different, my fashion sense has changed. Pretty much everything about me has, well, not pretty much everything, but a lot about me has changed. I've basically started and completed college. I've got one exam left. I've moved house, though you probably can't even tell. So yeah, a lot has changed for me. I'm guessing a lot would have changed about my audience too. I'm not expecting many people from before to still be around, but if you are, that's great. Stick around. These reviews may be semi-regular. I do listen to a lot more new music nowadays, so there'll be a lot more that I can review. I guess I contemplated returning ever since the start of 2026, but as soon as I saw a Reddit post where someone had received a Boards of Canada tape in the post, I thought, what better time to return than parallel to the release of Boards of Canada's fifth album after 13 years, Inferno. Still doesn't feel real. Now, I thought I'd start the review by just explaining a bit of my history with Boards of Canada, how I discovered them, how much of an impact they have on me. I first heard a Boards of Canada song at the end of a YTP, believe it or not. It was Nothing Is Real from their, I was going to say latest album, their second latest album, Tomorrow's Harvest. And yeah, I loved it. I didn't know it was Boards of Canada though, and maybe a year later I discovered Come to Daddy by Aphex Twin through like a Evolution of Electronic Music video. I forgot which one, but you'll probably be able to find it. And obviously, Aphex Twin naturally led me to discover all the other Warp Records Moogles, one of them being Boards of Canada. And honestly, I think out of all of these said Warp Records are giants, I think Boards of Canada has to be my favourite. It used to be Aphex Twin, but I just think Boards of Canada's music is more focused, they're more consistent, they've just got more peak, essentially. I think naturally I'll talk about sort of the singles first, and I'll go in release order. So the first thing we heard from this album was the elusively titled Tape 05, which turned out to be Deep Time from the album, and a lot of people on Reddit, at least, actually thought that it was going to be Father and Son. No, that is a vastly different track, which I'll get to later. But I watched a live stream of Tape 05 while I was in English class. And it was quite naughty, really, because obviously you're not supposed to be watching things in class. But at that moment, the live stream came on and I thought, nothing else matters right now than listening to the brothers' latest offering in 13 years. Sorry, the first offering in 13 years. And yeah, the first time I heard Deep Time, it did nothing short of absolutely blow the socks off me. It builds up a slightly uneasy atmosphere in the first half, riddled with Bach's sort of signature gloomy presence. Sort of reminiscent of like Tomorrow's Harvest in its sort of dystopian nature. And then sort of halfway through we're thrown into an opposite direction with the introduction of some sort of string instrument. I'm not entirely sure which one. It could just be a violin. Don't know. But yeah, this mood change, it sort of just lifts you up into the sky. It just completely changes the mood. And I fell in love with this track. And it was all I listened to, Boards of Canada wise, until the release of the next single, Introit/Prophecy. I found Introit to be honestly just so warm and charming with its analogue brilliance. It was so fluttery and whimsical. It kind of reminds me of Into the Rainbow Vein, the intro to Campfire Head Phase. Now, admittedly, Prophecy at 1420 megahertz kind of threw me off guard. It's completely different for the brothers. I mean, completely different. I guess in terms of mood, it kind of is reminiscent of Geogaddy, I don't know how you say it, a little bit. But sonically, I mean, it sounds completely different to anything they've ever made. It's reverby, it's 80s coded, but at the same time, it's still Boards of Canada to the core. It's got the cryptic vocals, the really, I'm going to keep using this term, analog. It's got such an analog feel to it. And, the guitars as well, even though it's not typical for Boards of Canada to use like a electric guitar kind of sound, the notes that they played were just so, again, just Bach coded, like. But yeah, I mean, it's a great track. I mean, at first, I will admit, I wasn't huge on it, but after a few listens I did kind of get it, and a lot of the songs on the album are similar, so that kind of helped me to get used to that style a little bit more. But yeah, to sum up the singles, they didn't disappoint. However, they set my expectations for the album for it to be maybe an 8 out of 10 I was expecting, when in reality this album's spoilers, but it's probably closer to a 9. Now, something to show you guys. I actually pre-ordered the vinyl, the limited edition one with the red disc, and it came a day before the album was even released properly on streaming services. So I sat on my bed on the 28th of May and I listened to the vinyl and just did nothing. I just listened to it, and it was just such an incredible, immersive experience. And as soon as the third track kicked in, obviously the first unheard stuff, I knew I was about to be subjected to just some absolutely incredible music. Just to sort of show you guys for a minute, some of the artwork. I mean, it's just incredible, the artwork. I mean, such a huge fan. The red translucent vinyl. Yeah, it's 2 discs, so 4 sides. And another thing that it comes with as well, which I'm really sort of a fan of. I didn't even know they existed until this vinyl came, but you'll have to bear with me a second. Find it in here somewhere. Yeah. So this, like, floppy, it's not called a floppy disk, but it's, I don't even know the name, but they called it a hexadisc or something like that. So, yeah, that's the thing. It's made out of the same material as the vinyl records, so vinyl, I would imagine. But it's floppy and it's bendy. And you just play it as like you did on any other record. It's really bizarre, but the music itself that's on the sort of floppy disk, I'm just going to call it a floppy disk, is really cool. I mean, I've only listened once, as I've only admittedly listened to the vinyl once. But yeah, it sounds really cool. It probably could have fit on the album, if I'm being honest. So, now to the actual rest of the album. Most of the tracks have a similar vibe to Prophecy, in that they are littered with these mysterious vocal samples, catchy analog synth melodies, and sort of a warm and comforting atmosphere, but simultaneously unnerving as well. A prime example of this is Naraka, which is a personal highlight for me and many other fans I've seen. The track is centered around this chant called the Hare Krishna Mantra, and it's actually one of the more optimistic sounds on the album. It's repetitive, but it feels like it subtly builds over time, and it's just such a well-structured track. Nothing more really to say about it. Great song, probably in my top 3 on the album. One of the more controversial tracks on this album is Father and Son, and I say it's controversial because I've heard a lot of talk about it, both positive and negative. It centers around a conversation where this guy is trying to justify his love for God more than he loves his family. At least I think that's what he's going on about. It's probably one of the most haunting songs on the record, mainly due to how well the vocal sample is accompanied by the somewhat childish sounding, like, bells, which sounds like they came straight from a horror movie. Admittedly, I didn't like this track too much on my first listen, mainly due to the vocals, which a lot of people don't like it for. But I soon came around to it, and it's now a personal highlight for me. You know, it's a big earworm, I suppose. Not only does this album have absolutely incredible full songs, but the interludes are also just sublime. Somewhere Right Now in the Future was a personal highlight for its sort of almost My Bloody Valentine's Loveless feel to it. You know, it's just got such a hazy and sluggish nature, and I won't be surprised if MBV was an inspiration for this track, because I know the brothers are a fan of them. The Process is also another standout interlude for me for its sort of deep and intimate first half, featuring this cryptic voiceover, followed by a beautiful passage of ambient piano. Some more highlights. Age of Capricorn was another big one. It sort of sounds like the intro to a nature documentary. It's so just sort of fulfilling, and when the bass hits originally, it just sends you completely somewhere else. The vocal chant as well is comparable to that of the one on Naraka, but this one's maybe even more optimistic. I love this one. Another highlight was Into the Magic Land. I feel like it's probably the most campfire head phase coded song on here. You know, it's got a very acoustic, guitar heavy vibe. It sort of makes you feel like you're, exploring somewhere. It's just got a very adventurous vibe to it, like you're trying to get home to your family. Again, another very good one on here. However, my absolute favourite track overall on this album is the penultimate track, You Retreat in Time and Space. It's a very patient track, utilising half of its 5 minute or so runtime to prepare you for debatably the most transcendent passage of music the Brothers have ever put out. The first half is beautiful, jovial ambient piece, which almost feels like a message to the listener that everything will be okay in the end. But when the tambourine and the melody comes in, I found that it was honestly, I was close to tears by how profoundly beautiful it is. The main melody sounds like it could be maybe a glockenspiel, and it gives it this sort of magical early quartet vibe, something he'd do on his album Rounds, maybe. Paired with the almost funk reminiscent bass guitar and all the other typical Bach touches, this easily sets itself apart from the rest. It's a perfect 10 out of 10 song, in my opinion. Overall, I was incredibly impressed with this offering from the Brothers. It feels like it borrows from every prior album in certain ways. Geogaddy for its ominous nature, Campfire Headphase for its extensive guitar use, Tomorrow's Harvest for the atmospheric and almost dystopian feel. It honestly feels more far removed from Music Has the Right to Children than they've ever been. But I don't really have any problem with this, despite Music Has the Right being my favourite album of all time, regardless of genre or artist. It's honestly maybe either my third or second favourite of theirs, and I would honestly give this a hasty 8.8 out of 10, which is the same score that I gave it on Album of the Year, if you want to check out my profile. Guys, this album review wasn't like insanely long or really thought out or anything. It was all, the idea of it was conceived and then the script was written and recorded all in one day, really. All in one afternoon and evening. I hope you didn't expect much for my first time coming back after 2.5 years. But yeah, I'm here, hopefully to stay. Maybe I might tackle some like easier albums next, ones with less tracks that are easier to digest, I suppose. Because, I found that it took me quite a lot of listens of this album to fully grasp and, remember what the songs sound like, more importantly though. But yeah, I doubt any of you don't know who Boards of Canada is. So I'm guessing you've all listened to this album. What do you think? If your name's Anthony Fantano though, don't bother commenting because your opinion is invalid.